if they've not achieved their total figures, every car that they have sold that is petrol, diesel, that essentially isn't electric, they will be fined £15,000 for not meeting the zero emission vehicles target by 2025. How can we tell if these numbers are good news or bad news? With electric vehicles coming, what a lot of people are doing is getting an electric vehicle in addition to their other vehicles. We will tell you why the Wolfe Power Club is about to buy its first electric car. Welcome to Wolfe Power Club, the biggest energy podcast on Apple. I'd extremely like to thank our sponsors, AIM Recruit, if you need any recruitment solutions, or if you are looking to join to the biggest energy summit to end the year in 2025. The Spectator Energy Summit officially will be launched later in the year, but if you want to become a partner now, join the Wolfe Power Club that will be chairing the conference. Please come and book your partnership slots with us, and we're happy to speak to you about the opportunities. But this summer we're entering a triple header around motoring and the power sources that the public are looking for. So tonight we're going to look at the various penalties at the moment out there and the sales of cars in the United Kingdom, and we're going to go through something called ZEV, which is a £15,000 penalty for every car that does not meet the mandate. And exciting news, listeners, we will tell you why the Wolfe Power Club is about to buy its first electric car. Secondly, tonight we're going to look at the production figures, what you as a public actually want to buy and what you go to. And this whole episode is going to be the actual market today. Then next week, we've got an unbelievable opportunity. We've got two-time Formula One world champion engine designer joining us, talking about how you win a world title and how you beat Ferrari. We've got the man, John Hilton, who defeated 6 years of Ferrari domination, and he tells us how you can spend hundreds of millions on a V10 engine and get it to win. That's next week's episode. And the final part of the trilogy is going to be looking at what we've seen at the British Motor Show in Farnborough. We're going to be looking at what has been achieved by the industry this year to make sure that we're progressing in the direction, and what energy trends are we looking at and stories outside of the S1EP data. And it's going to be an exciting episode. Relax, enjoy and watch. So before we get into the motor figures, I just want to answer a few of the comments we had on last week's guest, Catherine Porter. And I'd like to take this time to thank Catherine Porter for her words. Now, Catherine went through a very detailed report she has produced, which looks at the cost of net zero. As you can imagine, with such a report, people want to debate those figures and challenge it about what the alternative means. We have put various invites out to comments where people have recommended authors and journalists and industry leaders on who potentially could give the counter argument to Catherine's, but I've also had many people applauding Catherine's words, thanking her for the truth and the breakdown of the real costs of electricity, and other people challenging that facts. But that's what we love on the Wolfe Power Club. We are here for a platform of where people can really express their thoughts and what's going on. Next thing is, you're probably wondering why I'm in this beautiful green number. You'll see the logo here. I am a big Aston Martin fan, aka Team Silverstone, aka Stroll and Alonso, and we've got to celebrate. We've just finished the Hungarian Grand Prix, and as we enter this triple header of motoring excellence in the energy sector, I'm very delighted to say, after a very tough season, Aston Martin is back. We got a 5th and a 7th place, which means a big 16 points, and we've rocketed up the constructors table. So well done to everyone at Team Silverstone. And as a Aston Martin fanboy, I'm absolutely delighted. But the car industry is bigger than just Aston Martin. We've got sales that will cover and look at SMNT figures these figures will now pop up on your screen as we go through them. So we're first of all going to look at the various categories, and if you want to know what the lettering means, we will put a link to their website. But without reading out line for line, essentially BEV is the completely electric vehicle. The next two categories are hybrid vehicles, and then you've got petrol and diesel vehicles. Now, what we have seen is a couple of things here. First of all, that year on year, when we look at the changes, and say this is only partway through the year, but essentially that car sales in the United Kingdom are up 3.5%, which is really, really great news. The other thing that is also positive to see for the electric vehicle manufacturers is the market share has jumped. So it's gone from 16.6% of the total market share to 21.6%. But you'll see later in the episode, this is actually bad news overall. And the reason it's bad news overall is that essentially by the end of 2025, they need to be hitting 28%. And the reason that is so important is every car below that figure per manufacturer, there is a £15,000 fine. Yeah, you've heard me correct, guys. So your car could have a new sales price of under 30,000 if they've not achieved their total figures. Every car that they have sold that is petrol, diesel, that essentially isn't electric, they will be fined £15,000 for not meeting the zero emission vehicles target by 2025. So you can actually see that they are, in real terms, when you've achieved 21% out of 28%, in real terms, they're only at 75% of the quota they need, and they're facing a bunch of fines as we speak now. We then go into a optimistic looking picture, but again, it doesn't really help their electric vehicles because it will be across, and there's also penalties for vans. But actually, vans are up 37.7%. I've got my own theories behind that. I've listened to some of the leading manufacturers and journalists. I think a big change in van purchasing is, as a company director in the UK, you can no longer get a pickup through the taxation scheme, but you can get a van. So essentially, I think that some of that pickup this year has been about vans, but it's positive to see that vans in our country have gone from just below 4,000 vehicles at this time last year to 5,500 vehicles now. So that's good to see. We then go down to my favourite subject, and I've done a lot of work over the years in the HGV sector. I'm also a little bit sad to see that total sales are down by 12%. So in terms of what that means, real numbers is that HGVs this time last year sold nearly 11,000 vehicles, but actually this year they've sold just over 9,700. I think the reason behind that is a little bit of a reflection. So I think there's also some cycles to this, but I think reflection on if there's concerns in the economy or where emissions are going, but also how wealthy the nation's feeling. And there was huge investments during lockdown as fleet grew, and some of those fleets now are back to sort of level numbers, which means they're not doing the record numbers, and therefore there's pretty new equipment on the road, and essentially we've seen a stalling of the HGV market at this time. So I'd like you guys now to guess and have a think. In the last 6 years, as a nation, do we have more cars or less cars? Now, if you think about it, there was a period of time of lockdown, which actually meant people could save up for vehicles. And also there's been a period of time to build infrastructure. So in that 6 years, wonderful things in London, like the New Elizabeth line, have opened. And you'd normally say if there's been improved public transport, there needs to be less need for essentially vehicles and private vehicles. The other theory, though, is that with electric vehicles coming, what a lot of people are doing is getting an electric vehicle in addition to their other vehicles. So what they're doing is they've got an electric vehicle as their city vehicle, as an example, or electric vehicle for their school runs, and they're hanging on to a diesel petrol cars to do their long motoring. So feel free to guess what you think the figure is now, but I'm happy to say, or some people might be challenged and sad at this figure, in the last 6 years, vehicles in the UK, so this from 2018 to 2024, has actually risen by 2 million vehicles. It's gone from 39.9 million vehicles to 41.9 million vehicles. So all of those thinking that actually those bringing in electric vehicles and so on, it might be an as well as instead of. It looks to be bearing some fruit in that thing. And I would also say that another sadness might be that it kind of reflects a little bit on, is the infrastructure of public transport or the cost of public transport actually not moving in the right direction, and therefore people are finding it cheaper to travel by car for work or vehicles in general than they are by train. So it's a good debate. I'd love to hear your answers and questions as we go into this thing. Now, overall, how can we tell if these numbers are good news or bad news? And I personally think that the government actions that were taken this July show it was bad news. So essentially, the motoring community that makes and manufactures vehicles was saying that since the grants and subsidies went away from electric, it stalled the growth. Nearly 80% of electric vehicles in this country are owned by fleet or businesses, not private individuals. So that part of the market has stalled. So essentially, there's been big pressure on how do we move that we go from 1 in 4 cars being electric to 4 out of 5 cars to the 80% mark. Because as you can see from those trends that we've just gone through, we're nowhere near, and actually still as a total market share, petrol and diesel is still larger than the new car sales, let alone existing fleet that we've got in this country. And as you can see that even on brand new sales, we're at 21%, not the 28% at year end. So there's huge pressure on the government. And this July, the government actually conceded, and they've given an electric car grant back, which equates to 650 million. The other thing that they've really focused on is that lower end of car, and essentially is that you can get £3,750 off an EV vehicle that's in band 1 for emissions and is below £37,000 new market cost. So essentially, the government will subsidise your electric vehicle by 10%. So I think for me, it shows the concerns of where the market has stagnated to offer that. The next bit the government announced was that EV charging infrastructure, they're offering those companies £63 million to put infrastructure, and that included some fascinating projects on that funding. And so the things that were included, that was a rollout of chargers at the NHS as part of that 63 million. So the whole NHS fleet can go electric. A rollout of greater charge points on pavements. I say 63 million won't go a long way in terms of the United Kingdom, but in terms of, it shows again another area they're looking to tap. The other thing that they've done is 120 million in terms of discounts and grants for small vehicles by April 2026, again on vans, taxis and motorbikes. And we're hoping to get the Black Cab company on here soon in terms of that, those sort of figures, that essentially is a further 120 million of grants for those people. And on those sort of vehicles, there's grants of around £1,000 that can be accessed. And then finally, there's Drive 35. It's a bit more vague in this because it's a bit more long term, about going to 2035, and it's £2.5 billion to support EV manufacturing and R&D investment. So you can see that the government has got a 4-tier program, but the reason it's got a 4-tier program, it comes back to that really hard-hitting truth that as at the end of 2024, we were at 22 cars out of 100 sold that electric. Today, we're still around that number after we've seen the first quarter results, and this funding came in place this July the 15th, announced this summer, and we need to get it to 28%. But I guess you're then asking yourself, what happens if you don't meet ZEV? As I've said, a good example would be a manufacturer that sells 1 million cars. If they sell 1 million cars and less than 280,000 are sold as electric at the end of 2025 in that 1 million, every car under that 280,000 is fined £15,000. Now, the result of that fine of £15,000, perhaps if you're buying a vehicle like a Lamborghini or Ferrari that's £500,000, you don't actually notice that much, £15,000. But when you're talking about vehicles below £37,500, a fine of £15,000 is actually in some cases over half the value of the car. And it's a tax that so far in 2024 was a monitoring thing, a lenient thing, and this is the first year. And we'll come back to it about why the Wolfe Power Club has ended up buying an electric vehicle and our first vehicle. And you're going to be able to do podcasts in it. So I wanted to then look at a few of the runners and riders that are going to struggle, industry believes are going to struggle to meet the mark. So the first is beloved Ford. At one point, the most popular car manufacturer in the world, and certainly in the UK with models like the Fiesta and so on. Now, as of yet, it looks like their actual electric vehicle percentage is around the 7% mark, according to Reuters, well short that 28%. And it's partly because the Mustang Mach-E and the Explorer were delayed. They are now being run out and rolled out. And essentially, it looks like they're going to well underachieve the 25%. The next is Toyota, including Lexus. They've obviously been passionate about hybrid vehicles, other technologies. They've actually publicly and internationally challenged the concept about electric cars. And basically, again, a minimal EV range. And they reckon by late 2024, Toyota had only achieved 10%. Interestingly, though, they're some of the highest hybrid vehicle sellers. So that their Corolla hybrid is one of the most favoured vehicles of taxi drivers and good value driving. But in terms of actually the zero EV emissions mandate, they've got a big penalty coming. There's another famous household name here, Renault and its sister company Dacia, and essentially what they're looking at, they reckon that they're somewhere between 8.3%. They think Renault's achieved 12% and Dacia's achieved 1.4% at the end of 2024. Now, Renault's got a little bit of magic in that the Renault 5's just come out. It's got a big chance of being one of the most popular electric cars in history, and it looks absolutely stunning. But essentially, they are looking to really struggle this. And then we've got Stellantis, or who you guys know better as Nicole Papa, they've got Peugeot, Vauxhall, Citroën, and Fiat. In terms of their market share, in terms of they are around the 20% mark at the end of 2024, still quite a long way from the 28%. Interestingly, they almost directly affect what the UK market's averages are, and it's probably because they've got so many brands that are household names and part of that group. And we'll come back to Stellantis about why Wolfe Power Club is actually helping Stellantis, and we'll reveal that in a second. And then you've got Volkswagen Group. I was a bit surprised at this actually, because there seems to be a lot of electric options in the VW group, but again, they think at the end of 2024, they're around 16%. VW itself having 11-12%, Audi stronger at 17%, but they really think that, again, to make the 28% is going to be hit. And then another famous name, Japan's favourite, most fun, two-seater sports car that money can buy in terms of affordable price, Mazda. Mazda, again, are only at 6 to 7% of totally electric vehicles, again, well below the targets. However, there are some companies, and what can happen is that sell credits back to these companies, and they may well sell them at a rate lower than £15,000. So this is some of the interesting stuff. You've obviously got some companies that are 100% electric, pretty much. So you're looking at here, MG, BYD, Tesla. They can sell to the market back some of their shares to try and get to that 28% because they're totally electric. And I think, as everyone's seen, MG and Tesla have been very popular at the different electric price groups in terms of coming and getting the market share. The other people that have offered loads of electric options and seem to be way above the target are BMW, Mercedes, Cupra, Porsche. Obviously, Porsche have got a lot of Teslas that went out there, the electric Macan and so on. So they are actually going to be above their 28%. And then the other one that might surprise you is Jaguar, but essentially Jaguar has stopped their diesel and petrol line production. They've only got the I-Pace left. So again, it's actually moved Jaguar into the all-electric cars. And what they have to balance out with JLR and the rest of the Land Rovers is their mix of hybrids and diesel vehicles that come from them. So if you see there, Ford is missing it, Toyota's missing it, Renault's missing it, Stellantis is missing it, which is Peugeot, Vauxhall, Citroën, Fiat. VW Group is missing it, Mazda's missing it, but BMW, Mercedes, Volvo, Tesla, BYD are making it. So how has the Wolfe Power Club benefited, and how are we ending the first part of this trilogy of motoring specials? And as I say, next week, definitely tune in, guys. We've got two-time world champion who's designed a Formula One winning engine team, and he talks about working with the likes of Flavio Briatore. Now, before we go there, our big noise at Wolfe Power Club, we have bought our first electric car. Wolfe Power Club has basically really benefited from the ZEV, and would really like to thank Citroën at this point, part of the Stellantis group. And the reason I say really benefited is that it's fair to say that soon it'll be coming out, which will be our e-pod, and we're going to have a naming competition vehicle where you can record a podcast with myself or co-host Max, and essentially we've got ourselves an all-electric Citroën Ami. And the reason we can say that it's a really great time to celebrate the ZEV is that we were given a phenomenal discount. I won't go into the exact financials, but it's fair to say that after deposit, to have an Ami after the amazing ZEV discount they've done to try and increase their electric sales, is that it's costing me similar to a few round of drinks a month to have the Citroën Ami. There'll be lots of opportunities to sponsor the Ami, there'll be lots of opportunities to record in it, but I just wanted to let everyone know that to end this part of the trilogy, we're delighted to say that we have ended up with an electric car because of the government legislation. Sometimes people say I'm not always positive. I'm very positive today. It's going to be a great addition to our fleet. I'd like to thank you for your indulgence. Tune in, listen, and enjoy. And if you're going to the British Motor Show, we're going to be there on Friday at Farnborough, and we're going to be on the stand of Driving Force, which is the charity we're connected to, SAFA, and I'll be delighted to see you in Farnborough a week on Friday. See you then, guys. Run with the pack.